Yes.
So our defenses are two in Sikkim in my time. It's changed now, but when I took over the division, there was East Sikkim and North Sikkim. Now, East Sikkim, there's a road about 2 hours run from Gangtok up the hills, and you reach the high mountain straight away. You reach the Shanghu Lake, as I spoke of, which is about 12,400 feet. Then you go further up, and there's a pass called the Nathula Pass.
Yes.
Nathula.
I've been there.
Nathula Pass is at 14,200
Right.
feet. And the lowest picket of the division is there.
Yeah, I was there.
So
We went
have
there.
you have you
Yes.
been to Nathula Pass?
Yes.
Oh, very good. So you climb about 200 feet at the pass,
Yes.
and that is our viewpoint,
Right.
looking at the Chinese side. And the Chinese picket, which is opposite us, is just about
Yeah.
maybe 40 meters away.
Yeah. They see each other. Yes.
Yeah, we are sort of eyeball to eyeball.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Now we can see the relationships between India and China.
Right.
If the other side is smiling, the relationships are good,
Mm.
like it was during Deng Xiaoping's time and Hu Jintao and all that.
Mm.
Uh, Now probably there are a lot of frowns and scowls on the other side. So there's frowns and scowls duly returned from this side,
Mm.
which is just about 40 meters apart.
Mm.
There's a there's a little there's a pass there
Mm.
where from ancient times to the old Silk Road, various stuff from Tibet used to come, skins and yak milk and yak skins and heavy clothing and things like that, products of Tibet. And from here, rice and tea and other things used to go from the south. So that was the trade route from ancient time.
Right.
And so it's well, I think there's a road coming up from Yatung Valley, which belongs to Sikkim, which belongs to Tibet. It's a valley beyond this pass. And the road comes up from there, from the Chinese side to our picket. And then from our side, it proceeds down to the North Bengal plains. So this is the lowest picket. Then we've got pickets on the hills on both sides. And the heights of these pickets range from, this was 14,200 feet, the lowest one. On both sides, there are pickets which go up to about 15,000, and the highest picket we have is about 16,000 feet. Sort of a pinnacle right there. We have a number of pickets there, which are occupied by our troops. And the idea here is to get a vision into the Yatong Valley from which the Chinese attack could come, or Chinese military could have a forward motion, and at the same time to defend. Now, to defend these pickets, you have to climb a very steep hill. Now, here was I as a new general. I mean, I'm well consider myself fit and able to climb mountains. But when I climb these, have to get used to it because firstly the atmosphere is rarefied and you're not breathing very well,
Mm.
and secondly it's very very steep hill. So our soldiers are slowly trained and then become very adept at coming up and down these hills at pleasure, carrying their rifle and their ammunition and their backpack. You see, so it's not easy to attack these pickets because they're very high, and if the attackers tend to come up, there are hardly one or two ways to get up to these very craggy mountains. You generally follow a spur or a pathway,
Mm.
and one machine gun is good enough to put everybody down. In fact, even if you throw a stone at somebody climbing up, he'll go rolling down there.
Mm.
The defense is very good. So, on top of these hills, I happened to visit one. We have either a JCO in charge or an officer in charge of every picket there, and I've climbed every one of those as the GOC. And I expect when we climb these hills that they serve you soup made of mutton or soup made of chicken or meat soups with plenty of salt in it because that is what is required for high height.
Right.
You need protein and you need salt, right? Uh, when I climbed this picket, it was the tallest picket.
Mm.
See, there was a JSO in charge,
Mm.
and he offered me a tomato soup
Okay.
with plenty of sugar and salt inside.
Mm.
So I said, "You don't make meat soup here."
Yeah.
So the JSO tells me he's a guards, but the guards battalion. He said, sir, this is the highest picket here
Okay.
in North Sikkim, in East Sikkim.
Yeah.
And we've decided that we don't have any meat here.
Okay.
I said, why? He said, well, it's Bhagwan Shiv's Parvats.
Okay.
He said, you look at the Himalayas. So from this picket, you can see right from North Sikkim, the range of Himalayas, you're on top.
Yeah.
The top peaks of the Himalaya coming down to where you are. And then if you look on the eastern side, the top peaks continue to Bhutan, ending at on the other side of the Chumbi Valley, a very tall, pointed feature in Bhutan called Chomalhari, which goes up to about 26,000 feet. It's like a pinnacle of snow mountain stretched up. You can see it from our side. And there's a valley in between on which you have to cross to go to Bhutan. And the Chinese are in this valley. This is the Yatong Valley. At the bottom, Yatong is the town at the bottom of this set of pickets, and on the Chinese side. And there's a river, Yatong River, which comes from there. It cuts through the Himalayan mountains and also is a tributary of the Tista. Goes and joins the North Bengal Plains. So these are areas from which enemy could come inside our country, right? And this gesture tells me that, every year from this picket, we used to have 2 or 3 deaths of our Jawans. Because when the snow and all is going on, you have to climb down to your battalion headquarters for certain duties. Also, if you're going proceeding on leave or coming back from leave, or people getting the orders in the dark, letters and things like that, rations, everything. So Jawans have to go down and come up again. And so when you're doing that in the winter, that the snows are such that the pathway is very narrow, see, on a spur. And if you take one step outside, the pathway is not more than a foot wide. See? So if by chance you put a foot on the side, it could be a deep snow drift, but very nice snow on top, and you just sink and disappear. You're never seen again. So he said from this picket, we've had 2 to 3 deaths every year.
Okay.
Because I told him that, look, the Guards battalion is occupying that picket, that the 3 other pickets I had visited, where everybody's eating meat and having meat soups and things. So why are you vegetarian? He said, but here we used to have 2 to 3 deaths every year. So when we took over from the last battalion, they said on this picket, you don't take any meat. And this is the Lord Shiva's Parvat, the mountain.
Okay.
You treat it with respect.
Okay.
And since we did that, there's been not a single death for the last 2 3 years.
Oh.
The people going down to the battalion headquarters would take, these jerry cans that the army gets for fuel and kerosene, and you have to heat with kerosene heaters in all these pickets. So kerosene comes in a jerry can, a 4-gallon jerry can. So when the jerry can is empty, it has to be sent back to the battalion headquarters to be refilled. So many people in the winter, instead of taking 2 hours to walk down this huge slope to the battalion headquarters lower down, you sit on the jerry can. Give yourself a push and you're there in a few minutes because you slide down the snow. Which is even that. Nobody has died after we stopped having meat here. This is something I want to tell you. There's another example. When the road is coming up from Gangtok to this high altitude area, you come to about 10,000 feet, or 10,000, between 10,000 and 11,000. There's a place called a Khuni Nala. Now, Khuni Nalas exist in Kashmir, they exist here also. Khuni because it kills. What happens is that these are young mountains, the Himalayas. You get fossils of sea fish in these areas.
Right.
So it was a sea area. And when the Indian plate came and banged millions of years ago into the Asiatic plain, the Himalayas came up. So the Himalayas are young mountains compared to the Deccan Plateau. Deccan Plateau is old, volcanic, very hard. These are soft mountains. So when you are blasting and making roads, the whole mountain shakes and landslides take place. If it rains very heavily, landslides take place. So this Khuni Lala is about a distance of about, I would say, 500 meters in a curve like this. A huge mountain on your left.
Okay.
And a huge drop into the khads below, thousands of feet on your right. And you cut your road there. And many foreigners who come to visit, they said, why can't India tarmac these roads? You can't tarmac, landslide takes place, the whole road goes down. You see? So what the engineers do is that they keep on cutting into the hillside and putting lot of rocks and stone walls and things to protect the land. But when a landslide comes, all of it goes. So every year you lose something like 10 or 15 men every year
Okay.
to their death because your truck is going or landslide comes down. So once the army commander was visiting me, that's Eric was, and I was driving him up this road. And when we came to this Khuni Nala, somebody had put on the outer edge where the slope goes down a few stones with a vermilion mark on it. So he told me, he said, see, General, somebody's occupied that area with two stones, it's government land. And before you will say Jack Robinson or that temple will come up over there. You must have these removed. And the Buddhists put prayer flags there. The Hindus put some few stones with the vermilion mark.
Yeah.
And the Buddhists come and put prayer flags.
Yeah.
So he told me this must be removed. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to remove this. It's a matter of faith.
Right.
Now, ever since they put a few vermilion marks on those stones and started building something there, and the Buddhists put some prayer flag, there has been no death on that road, on that communal.
Oh.
So by the time I took over, the brigade commander explained to me, he said, over the last 1 year since this has been done, there has not been a single death. Now what happens is every truck driver comes there, he looks at that, those few stones and prayer flags, he folds his hands and bows his head. Then he drives. And when he drives, landslides still take place. They take place before he came or he came after he came. But while he's crossing, nothing happens.
Okay.
It's just faith. So some people believe it, others don't. Now, so in the defense of Sikkim, the British, I've told you this earlier when I was talking about the staff college, I didn't like the British plans because, British fight in somebody else's country and they run like hell whenever things get too hot. Like Dunkirk, for instance. So they're not defending the British Islands. They are fighting their battles in other people's countries, in Europe, for instance, or in India, or in Burma.
Right.
Americans do the same. Because nobody has attacked, since Julius Caesar, nobody's attacked mainland Britain. And it's very difficult to attack mainland United States because there's huge oceans on both sides. So they like to fight on other people's land. Therefore, their tactical and strategic principles are different to a land border country. And we had to do that, had to initiate a change in staff college for teaching people. That we get rid of this teaching that the British have given us. So, we are like the pupils. They have taught us the military art. Let's accept that because it is the British Indian Army. They are the ones who raised all these units of ours. But then, like a good pupil, you go far beyond your teacher in due course of time. I had to explain that to some of the British officers later when I was a lieutenant general. When they used to say, oh, we never taught you that, he said, you have to learn much more because we are a massive army and Britain never had an army that large as us. You see? Because they're massive borders and we got massive enemies on our borders. So therefore, now in the defense of this land, the British program was that you have to, if an enemy thrusts against you, he has planned for it. That means he's got a 3 or 4 times or 5 times larger force level that comes against your defenses. So it's very difficult to stop him there. You get pushback. So what you do is that you allow the pushback and you keep on firing at him to reduce his advantage of massive forces, and you withdraw to a certain distance, and then you have a vital ground further back, which you defend to the last man, last round, and from which you lay your counterattack to retake the position after the enemy attack has lost its momentum. That's the principle. But I looked at these mountains, and I must tell you, Nivedita, I fell in love with these mountains. Just so beautiful. You, as a civilian, would be ready to pay ₹1,000,000 to have the chance of just seeing this area. You're not allowed to do that because it's not a tourist spot. But we in the military, we curse our posting there, but nowhere in the world can you get this experience of such beauty of high snow mountains, beautiful scenery. God has given you everything there, you see, and you learn how to live there. Now you get in the winters about 20, 30 feet of snow. You've got to survive there if you're living there. And in the summer, many of these peaks become bare because the snow melts, because it's a hot summer.
Right.
We are different to Ladakh in Sikkim because it's a lower altitude. In Ladakh, the whole area is high altitude and there's a breathing problem there. But in our case, because it's just a mountain range between us and the high altitude, you find trees growing up to 11,000 feet, 10,000, 11,000 feet. And I must tell you, we can change the climate because what we do is that whenever we are posted there, we grow trees. Now, the trees grow in a stunted way because of the cold. But nevertheless, if you look after them, they'll grow. And once the trees grow, the weather starts changing. There's more rain and less snow, right? And there's more oxygen, so you can breathe. Another thing in these mountains that you see are these, you call them bougainvillea? What do you call it?
Yeah,
They grow the thorny bushes with flowers.
Yes, yes. Bougainvillea.
Yeah, and you know, these bougainvillea are so they're natural, thick growth
Yeah.
that enemy troops can't go through it.
Oh.
So what you do is you encourage the growth in certain areas where you don't want an enemy attack to come through. Very difficult. Even your compass doesn't work inside inside a large area of thick bougainvillea. These very close together. They're full of thorns, and they're lovely flowers, no doubt. But you can't go through this.
Right.
You can't hack your way through.
Right.
And I've tested that. A whole battalion gets lost inside because they compass really well for some reason. So it is a very good obstacle system to create on these mountains in these higher areas. But nothing grows about 11,000 or 11,500. So we have more oxygen in the northeast, high altitude areas vis-a-vis Ladakh area. So I saw these mountains and I said, this program of drawing from there to a vital ground at the back and then holding that and then doing a counter and non-workable.
Right. Right.
So though my corps commander was a man called Lieutenant General Balaram, he's from the Signals Corps, and he had been the GSO-1 operations of a neighboring division at Kalimpong, holding the Jelepla Pass further east of Nathula, high altitude. So when I took over, he kept on asking me that you follow the same plans as that. But after I checked my corps and all that, I told him, I said, no, sir, I am not going to withdraw from these high pickets. Bhagwan Shiv ka parvat hai.
Yeah.
We don't give it to the enemy.
Okay.
But those are army headquarter plans. So General Balaram, of course, he was a very nice man and we were friendly, but he didn't like me bucking the orders. Firstly, I'm from the armored corps, not supposed to know much about the mountains. Though I've been born and bred in the mountains since I was in Sherwood College in Nainital climbing mountains as a young man. But the fact is that infantry tactics and infantry methods of functioning, since you're a tank man and people don't agree that you know much about it. Nevertheless, I stuck my ground. So he ran a big exercise in the corps headquarters about the same thing about how we defend these areas. And he had two other divisions under his command. There was a division in Binaguri, looking after the Bhutan area and all that, 23 division. And there was a third division. So 3 divisional commanders there. I was only one of them, looking after Sikkim. And everybody stuck to the government plan. And I was the man who went opposing it. I said, no, we are not going to leave from here. So then corps commander asked me, he said, if the enemy comes through the passes and you're sitting on side of those pickets, how do you stop those people? I said, I don't. I stay on the pickets. You're the one who has to stop them. So you use your, we had a brigade reserve and all that, and if you ask for more reserve, then you're the one who's supposed to take them out. You see? If you can't do it, you give me your reserves and I'll do it. So there was a bit of a jagra here. Anyway, so I think they all made a good fool of me there in the sand model discussions. I stuck to my guns and said, I'm not leaving this. So my view was that, you know, these high mountains, you've got artillery OPs on top of them. Okay. Where you don't have enough artillery officers, you train the infantry commander, that is the JCO or the officer, okay, to control artillery fire. Sitting at such a height, You can bring artillery fire down on the Chinese in the Yatum in the valley below. And as they come up the road along the road, then even if they cross the passes and cross to the southern side of the Great Mountain Range, you can still bring artillery fire them because you observe it. You're sitting on top. As I told my corps commander, I said, from where I'm sitting on the picket, I can bash up your headquarters with medium guns and you'll disappear from the scene. Because I can see you. Just like this. And you can see the set and the set from miles on it. Artillery observation is important, and artillery guns are important. Medium guns, which can carry the shell to long distance. It's a deadly weapon. See? So I said, this is the way it's going to be done. They're not going to need these pickets. So naturally, this unfortunately was reported to Army headquarters, and everybody took a dim view of upstart Major General who's trying to change Army headquarters plan. So the Army chief was Krishna Rao, General Krishna Rao. I've spoken about him before because he was Western Army commander when I was BGS of 2 Corps in Chandi Mandir. And we've been on a number of exercises together. So I don't know if I told you, once we were bouncing around in the dark night because a para drop was going to be done of a battalion. And the TGMO in their guild was wanting to jump. He's a parachutist. And we had to select the dropping zone very carefully that the old man should not break his leg and all that sort of thing. We were bouncing along through cross-country tracks in the desert to go to the dropping zone. The vehicle was being driven by the corps commander at that stage was Lieutenant General M.L. Chibber from 5th Gurkhas, and the army commander, General Krishna, was sitting next to him. And I was sitting at the back, and my brigadier, chap called Tabari, was sitting at the back. So the army commander asked General Chib, who was driving in the middle of the night across the desert, that Chib, if you became the army chief tomorrow, what is the first thing you do?
Yeah.
So Chibber hummed and hawed. He said, there are 2 junior officers at the back, so why don't you ask them first? So Krishna Rao looked at the back, and I was sitting behind him. So he saw Briggs Tabari, who was the brigadier in charge of administration of the corps. He said, what's your name? He said, my name is Tabari, sir. He says, you answer that. He says, sir, Brigadier Sharma is senior to me. Maybe you should ask him first. So he turned around and said, all right, Brigadier Sharma, tell us. I said, could you repeat the question, sir? I'm a little hard of hearing. He said, the question is, if you became the army chief tomorrow, what is the first thing that you do? I said, the military secretary's branch, who's in charge of all our postings and promotions, the first thing I'll do, I'll line them up in Connaught Place and shoot the whole lot dead. So he started laughing. He says, you're that angry? I said, yes. He said, what do you think should be done about that? I said, they must understand they don't look after their own careers. They should look after the careers of the military that they're supposed to look after. And you need an organization to oversee them. And funnily enough, he became the army. He's the first man who instituted an organization led by a major general, which oversees what the MS branch does, and it reports directly to the army chief. So that certain officers who are very good officers who have been superseded for no rhyme or reason, if they complain, then their cases are looked at and reconsidered by the army chief, and again reconsidered by the Ministry of Defense, provided we find some reasons to not support the views of the military secretaries. Now, anyway, so he knew me from then. Krishna Rao was the chief. He saw that Dick Sharma, as usual, always makes noise. He decided to visit Sikkim. He came to Sikkim. And he landed at the Gangtok helipad, which is at about 5,500 feet. He was accompanied by the corps commander. Corps commander was standing next to the tail plane of the helicopter on the plane. So Krishna Rao told me, hey, Tich, you come with me. We wanted to see the surrounding terrain because the KLP had a key location plan to be permanent accommodation for troops that to be built. And they want to know where it should be built. We saw a huge hill in front. He said, why can't we build the KLP there? I said, no, you can't build it there. Because the whole economy of Sikkim is dependent on that hill. He said, why? I said, because the finest lychees,
Oh,
that big, inch and a half long. What is the English word for lychee? Not
whiskey.
lychees, but you know,
Peaches.
huh?
Peaches? Are you talking about
No,
peaches?
no, you get a little thing with black dots inside to put into a food.
Oh,
Elaichi, elaichi,
elaichi.
elaichi, elaichi.
Cardamom.
There's one and a half.
Cardamom.
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 1.5 inches long,
Wow.
best in the country. Can't get it anywhere else. You open that, the perfume spreads in your room. The second thing they've got trees is the bark of the tree that you use in cooking,
Darchini.
uh, and dalchini. The dalchini there, which you take from the Sikkim trees, if you just open the packet, the whole house gets full of the aroma. You can't get better than that. So I said, this is what that. You sure? I didn't know that. I said, don't worry, when you go, we'll give you a couple of bagfuls of both.
Huh.
Let your wife enjoy your food. You see? So I said, no. And secondly, I said, because the elaichi trees, cardamom trees, and dalchini trees, what do you call
Cinnamon.
dalchini in English?
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon
Cinnamon.
trees. The ground has been tested. It will not take proper pakka building because, it's too soft. It will not give you good foundations. And there's a lot of rain here, landslides and others, and you will not be able to exist. So talking to him. Then he said, what's your biggest problem here? So I turned around to the helicopter. You see that helicopter tail wing? Yes, left, and the clock thing, turn right, 1 degree. That's my problem. So he looked back, he said, oh, that's the corps commander standing there. And he started laughing. That's my biggest problem. He said, are you going to brief me about that? I said, yes, I'll brief you, provided he gives me permission. So next day I briefed him, where he ordered nobody from my division to be present, only himself, the Director General Military Operations, who was a person called K.K. Hazari, a good friend of mine, who a little senior to me, who was a Major General in Lieutenant General in Army Headquarters looking after the military operations. He was there. And we had Brigadier Anand from the Gurkhas, who was the PGS of the Corps Commander in the plains, North Bengal plains, the Corps headquarters, and and the Corps Commander himself, Balara. So they were all there, and I was alone. So the chief told me that if you want to point out on the map when you're discussing your plans, you can ask the BGS of the Corps to point out. I said, no, I'll point out myself. I know my maps. So I briefed them. And then when we came to the question of defense, I got the permission to speak freely, despite the fact that my corps commander didn't agree with what I was saying. So he got the permission from the corps commander, and I told him, I said, your plans are to withdraw from these great mountains in case they are heavily attacked to a vital ground further back. I said, it's not going to work here. They may be in the shop window of these great mountains, but they are the vital ground. You have to hold them at all costs. Because your artillery observation there can kill the enemy many miles on his side and many miles on your side. Actually, your guns have to be positioned carefully some way back, and they must be controlled by these artillery OPs on top of these mountains. And if the enemy comes through the lower passes into the area of Sikkim, you have to have separate reserve forces to deal with them. If they want to attack high pickets, they cannot attack from their side because it's very, very steep. It's like a rock wall, 1,000 feet high. So you have to come through the passes, come to our side, and then go up these slopes to try and capture these pickets. And I said that's not possible because armed men coming up a single track up the slope will easily defeat them. There's no problem. So while they are turning around to deal with our pickets to remove the artillery OP, they have to contract them there itself from the rear area. So the chief accepted that plan.
Okay.
And he told the Director General Military Operations, K.K. Hazari, he said, have you got that? He said, yes, I've got it. He said, then please change the army headquarters plans as the general has described. If you can't uh, understand exactly what he said, you please call him to Delhi and let him write out the operation plan. So I think the fact that I was able to express a truth which nobody else was ready to accept.
Right.
That was a complete change in my career. I did that in Mizoram and I did it here. Otherwise, as a superseded officer, was about 400 or 500 officers having gone above me in seniority. No question of my going above the rank of brigadier. The question here is that one mustn't take counsel of one's fear of higher authority. If one believes something, you have to come out and say so, and say it vehemently. Now, everybody thinks that the army is sort of a very rigid organization which believes in orders which have to be obeyed. I must tell you that by the time I commanded the College of Combat as a Lieutenant General, I could teach the High Command course the art of disobedience of orders without getting court-martial.
Okay.
Because sometimes you get such idiotic orders from the top, based on intelligence from the higher authorities, from your diplomatic corps, from the RNAW, or from the IB, which the government believes, and which is given as God's gospel to the military to function on, but it is not true. So in those days, the tendency was that the intelligence from the forward troops were seeing the enemy is not correct. I told you this about the 1965 war, when we didn't know that the whole armored division of Pakistan was extra.
Yeah.
And we came to a little bit of grief because of that.
Right.
So that you don't believe your own forward troops because you've got an intelligence from the top which says A is A and the troops at the bottom saying it's not A, it's B. You don't believe it as a senior commander. And then you blame the forward troops for having failed or something because they tend to follow your orders. So the answer really is that you say, yes, sir, 3 bags full to your boss, but you do what you have to do. And having done what you have to do, if you succeed, that's compliments to all up and down the line. If you fail, then you've got to be sacked anyway, so you get sacked. Right? So it's better to sack rather than to hide what you feel is the truth. Right. So that is one of the major things I did in the second. The next is that after that we changed all our plans. And I said to, there's another factor. After the 1962 war, where, as you recollect, the Chinese had attacked us by surprise and everybody was talking about Hindi Chini bye bye. And when they attacked the Namka Chu, again 4 Division, I was the major in staff quarters. I told you all the story before. As they attacked our troops, were shouting Hindi Chini bye bye as they walked and killing us.
Right.
So you can't believe political ideas who have got a yen for deciding on certain things because we had in those days had a defense minister who was communist, Krishna Menon. And then not accept what the military plan is. Because military does not look at the rights and wrongs of the political system.
Right.
Military sees across the border what is there with the enemy. What is his capability? How many forces does he have? What type of weapons does he have? What type of commanders does he have? And therefore, what is he capable of doing? And once you've decided what he's capable of doing, you have to have minimum capability to defend yourself against that. You're not bothered whether it's a friend. Now, today's friends are tomorrow's enemies. Yeah. And tomorrow's enemies are today's friends. Isn't it? So, for military commanders, it's message to make your own plan. And for those who control the purse strings, in those days, the so-called finance minister used to prevent the military from getting any money to get the weapons or organizations that they want. Why? Because the bureaucratic feeling is, oh, these military chaps only want to do war. They only want to build themselves up. You see? So don't give them the money. So when you have a failure, like you did in 1962, then it wakes everybody up. Right. That's why I told you. We drank to the health of Mao Zedong and Chow En-lai as a major in staff college to say, thank God he's done this because our country has woken up. Yes, we lost many men and we lost a lot of reputation and we came to grief. Jawaharlal Nehru died. It's time for him to go, and a new man has come. It's time for him to come. Life is only change, and we have to accept change. You can't say the old man can carry on forever, right? So I think that has woken India up, and the 62 war, and I'm very happy it happened. The result is some respect for military thinking, even in the bureaucracy today. And now we've got chiefs and others who are ready to stand up and say what they want, not try and say what, what the prime minister and the cabinet want to hear. All right. So this is a lesson in Sikkim. And we managed to get my plans through. And it was a delightful area to be in. More troops had to be arranged for the so-called defense of Sikkim, because if I was not going to withdraw from the top thing, that means we had to create a system in the pickets of lasting the battle out. So we planned on 40 days lasting on the picket. You see, now you're a picket surrounded by only mountains, and your supplies have to be there to last for a month in case supplies are cut off, in case the enemy attacks and come behind you. Second point is water. So we tried it out to collect water. We made cement tanks and other tanks, filled them with water, and everybody said water won't last for 40 days. We said, no, we have taps put into the cement. We're using the water every day and filling it up every day. So there is a change in the water. So in case operations start, yes, we won't have any more water for 40 days, but we'll drink out of these tanks. Next point was, how do you take casualties away from a high picket in case somebody gets very severely injured? There's an evacuation system in every military. And, these bandsmen that you see of the army are really stretcher bearers. So each battalion has about 16 of them. 4 of them can carry a stretcher, you see. So bring casualties down to a medical aid port from where he's evacuated. But when you're on a whole steep like this, steep hill, 4 men are not sufficient to carry a stretcher. You need minimum 8 men to carry a stretcher, because it's such a high slope. Breathing is difficult because you're in high altitude. So if anybody is wounded and has to be carried back, 8 men has to be provided, and they don't last more than 15 minutes. So you have to have another 8 men to relieve them. So for 1 man, you have to put 16 men, and then your strength of the picket is reduced and you can't fight. So I said no casualties will be removed. According to military principles, the casualty must be removed because somebody is wailing and groaning. That brings down the morale of the rest of the troops. That's the old Western way of looking at it. He said he can wail as much as he likes. We don't have the troops to bring him down from the high mountain. Therefore, we have an aid post at the back. These same stretcher bearers are trained to do first aid. They do the best, give a morphine injection or wrap the chap up, and if he has to die, he dies. If he doesn't die, we've got good faith. Right? So we decided to keep casualties. We practiced in exercises to keep casualties for 40 days. By which time a counterattack would be taking place to relieve us. So infantry JCOs and Havaldars were trained to bring down artillery fire. They were very good once you train them. No holds barred. That is East Sikkim. Now I'll say a few words about North Sikkim. North Sikkim stretches up into the Tibetan Plateau. And the Tibetan Plateau is flat there. So you follow the line of the Tista River. You leave Kanchenjunga on your left and you keep on climbing till you dip out through the channel that the river has cut through the high mountains into the Tibetan Plateau, which is north of the Great Himalayan Range. So the Himalayan ranges are, the heights of the peaks are 22,000, 24,000, and there are passes there. The one that the Tista cut through must be at about 16,000, right? And there's another pass on the other side where there's the dip in the hills. It's called Dongkyala. It passes 18,200 feet. See? On the other side is a flat plain. Now the average height of this flat plain, Nivedita, is 16,000 feet. But it rises and falls like the Thar Desert. Except it's not sandy, it's hard ground. See? There are a lot of shale and a lot of stony areas. A sort of a lichen grows on it. Lichen is it's a plant. I don't know how much you know about botany. I don't know much.
I know.
But the lichen, you as a human being can hardly see it. But all the yaks and mountain goats and